This is the iPad Pro. There are a lot of great qualities about it, and some things that are holding it back, but overall it gives us an idea of what Apple thinks the future of computing is, and it shows us what needs to be done to actually get there. So what's really different here is the form factor, and it's huge. It has a 12.9-inch screen, but looks almost identical to the iPad Air and iPad Mini, it's just bigger. We'll talk about that screen a bit more in a second, but the actual build of the Pro is quite good. It is heavy compared to the iPad Air, but for the size it's well weighted and is extremely well balanced. It is a bit big to hold sometimes and can be a little awkward, but if you're sitting down or at a desk it is manageable, you just have to get used to it, but it's really not the same feeling as the smaller iPads. You also have the usual power button, volume rocker, Touch ID home button, and lightning port, but you also have a new connector on the left side. This is called the Smart Connector, and it allows you to use third-party accessories that communicate and get power directly from the iPad. Right now this is mainly used for keyboards, but in the future it could be used with other accessories as well, and it's open to third parties. That big body also allows for some awesome speakers. The Pro has not one, not two, but 4 speakers, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom. For built-in speakers, they are incredible and they really surprised me the first time. They are very loud enough that I usually can't have the volume all the way up, and they sound pretty good at the same time. You can still tell that they're built-in speakers, but they're the only built-in speakers that I have no problem using exclusively and don't feel the need to connect to an external source. They are also smart by adjusting where the low ends are so that no matter which way you hold the iPad, the lows will always come from the bottom speakers. Overall, this is one of the best features of the Pro. Now, underneath the hood you have quite a bit of power. There's a new Apple A9X processor with 4GB of RAM. The performance on this thing is just excellent overall. Underneath there's also a huge 10,307 mAh battery, which lasts about 10 hours like the other iPads. That hardware and battery is used to power that 12.9-inch screen. It's 2732 by 2048 and it looks very good. It has great color and viewing angles and is very sharp for pretty much anything you're doing. That screen is what makes the iPad Pro. Even though everything the Pro does isn't all that different from the smaller iPad, the bigger screen really does give you more room to do things, even though what you're doing is essentially the same. This means that you are more productive and you can do more. There are improvements that the screen allows, like a full-size virtual keyboard with a number row up top, and when using split view you get a much bigger area to work. In other areas though, it's clear that this bigger screen isn't used to the best of its ability, and that isn't more clear than on the home screen. There is so much room to do things here, but it's just used for the same grid of icons that we're used to. A lot of the normal iPad apps aren't updated for the Pro yet, but that'll happen with time, and when using optimized apps, the size is used well, but just some areas like the home screen are really lacking. What isn't lacking in the iPad Pro isn't really part of the iPad Pro, it's the Apple Pencil. This is hands down the best stylus you can get right now. I've used everything from Wacom all the way to the Surface Pro and Surface Book stylus, and this one is the best I've ever used. This is a typical Apple product. There's no buttons, no interface, just something you pick up and start using, and it works pretty fantastically. In the hand it feels solid. It can be a bit slippery sometimes thanks to the glossy texture, but it has a great weight and an overall good feel in the hand. On the back you have a magnetic cap with a lightning jack for charging, and it comes with an adapter for charging with a normal cable, which is probably how you're going to want to do it most of the time. But if you're out on the go, you don't have to bring your cable with you because you can plug it in right into the iPad and charge it if it runs out. The battery life is great though, it lasts around 12 hours on a charge, but what really matters is how it is to use. This is the closest you can get today to the feel of a real pencil digitally. What makes it great is the low latency and pressure and tilt control. That latency is extremely low, which means that the delay between when you make a stroke and when it actually appears on the screen is almost instant. With a normal pencil, it is instant, and that latency is what makes writing with most styluses feel disconnected and fake. That low latency, along with the pressure sensitivity and tilt control, give you really fine controls over what you're drawing on the screen. Pressure sensitivity is what you would expect. You push harder and you get a darker stroke, but you can also tilt the pencil sideways and get a wider stroke, which is much more similar to how you would do it on a normal pencil. For most normal people, the pencil probably wouldn't be something that they need, but for someone like me who sketches a lot for my designs and needs those to be digital at some point, it's pretty great. I also handed it over to some of my friends who are illustrators just to see what they can do, and in just a few minutes they drew up some pretty cool illustrations without any real learning curve or training sessions. If you're an illustrator, it's definitely worth checking out, but it really just depends on your workflow and how you like to work. You can very easily create awesome work on this device with the pencil, and if you're on the go and draw a lot, the pencil and iPad Pro may be the digital device to have. Now, everything so far has been pretty great for the most part, but there is one big issue with the iPad Pro. The problem is the apps. Right now the apps that are there work really well, but there aren't the kind of Pro apps that you would expect to be able to run on a Pro product. This is an issue that may be solved over time, but it may not. But it's really up to Apple to do so. This is really what's holding it back right now, and the iPad Pro just needs more Pro apps. If this was solved, I think the idea of the iPad Pro being a laptop replacement would be more valid. The form factor and the OS are more personal preference, but the apps, those really need to be there for this to be a success long term. So, should you buy the iPad Pro? Well, it really depends on what you're looking for. If you want the Apple Pencil and know that you'll use it, then definitely it's a no-brainer, and it's why I'm keeping it. But if you're a student, maybe. If you need it for work, maybe. Maybe is kind of the answer here. For the price of the iPad Pro, you can get a Windows laptop that can do more functionally, so it's kind of hard to recommend. I'd say that if you know why you want it, then yes, but if you aren't sure, I'd probably stick to a traditional laptop for now.